All right, what's up? Welcome back, everybody. So Cam James is a YouTube creator that I follow, that I have, whose work I appreciate, and who I've been in touch with, specifically to let him know how much I appreciated the video he did talking about the history of black fraternities and sororities and some of the damage that has been caused, and his own experience. His coverage more recently of Rashad Rishi, whatever, the TYT dude, and all of his phony degrees has been hilarious. And there's been a slight overlap with Morgan State, so I had reached out about that as well. But when I saw that he sat down with Henry Louis Gates about this new PBS series, I had already commented and said that this can't be good because of what I know to be about what I know about the series, having seen it and reviewed it and all of that. And if you haven't seen those videos, please check them out. But a number of you have mentioned this to me. I saw it myself, so I figured, all right, well, let's go. It's if I did 4 hours of that super nonsense, I can make it through 30 more minutes of this. So let's see what they do. Let's see what it is. Let's see how it goes.
Race was something that one embraced willingly or had imposed on one from the outside.
It's a construct.
Right.
Yeah. In elementary school, and I did a book report on Dr. King, and I went down to the school library, thumbing through the book, looking at the pictures, and within 30 seconds, there was a picture of my dad.
They're Ashkenazi Jews or Sephardic Jews. They're Jews that look like you and me.
We Jews have to own the fact that we benefit from white privilege. But by the same
And again, Shlomo Sand's book, The Invention of the Jewish People, please read that for a more recent top flight scholarship on the history of just that social construct. So how do we define Jews? Who become the spokespeople? All of that. Please check all that out because this can't be sufficient. I mean, obviously, I'm biased going in, but a bias based on experience and data. But yeah,
token, white privilege isn't distributed equally.
How has that effort been seen in the pursuit of liberation in Palestine?
A broader peace and eventually a Palestinian state.
So please see the experts on Zionism and the critique of that right there. That even in that little summarizing clip, to use what has already been done here, the connection to Dr. King through his father, to then justify the Zionist occupation of Palestine, to then say accurately that for Jews, this means liberation, and for a specific Jew, not all Jews, not the Sephardim, not the Falasha, not etc., and not even Reform, certainly not revolutionary Jews, a particular conservative, political, observant, and believing, if not in the full mythology of the Bible, in the Zionist project. So that's who gets liberation, and then you could even see in his face, he's not taking it seriously, something about a Palestinian state. But we already know what that would be, a Palestinian state that does not have control over its borders, does not have the kind of funding and support Israel would have, does not have the access to resources, and so much other is wrong with that two-state solution, as it's been called. This is so we're already off to a troubled start. And we're 45 seconds in.
Dr. Gates, thanks for meeting with me.
Nice to meet you.
I did some reading about you. One thing that I found that we connected on was that you discovered through tracing your ancestry that you were descended in part from the Yoruba people. And you were also surprised at the amount of European ancestry that was present. What did that do to how you view other ethnic groups like Jewish people, like, anyone else that...
He was really happy to find out about that European blood. I saw some of that.
different from yours?
Oh, that's a great question.
And then I also suspect that Cam didn't do enough of the reading about Gates to go into some of what I've covered in these series about Gates's antipathy towards Africana studies and the radical wing of Black studies, and to his imposition of himself into those spaces to liberalize and narrow the scope politically of those spaces. So I feel like, but okay.
Great-grandfather, we knew was fathered by a white man. That was well known. My great-great-grandmother had 5 kids. They all looked white. And she took the secret of their father's identity to her grave. She only told them that they all had the same father and that he was a white man. And it took all these years, man. It took C.C. Moore, the genetic genealogist, 4 years analyzing my DNA and all those DNA cousin matches on a website to find the guy. And a year ago, in the Gates family home in Cumberland, Maryland, halfway between Pittsburgh and Washington, 150 descendants of that lady gathered to learn the identity of our long-lost great-great-grandfather. And when you look around, you see there are Gateses with blue eyes, and Gateses with green eyes, and Gateses with straight hair, and Gateses that could have passed.
So what?
And then Gateses who look like me, you know, with fine brown, you know, color and nice African features. So I was keenly aware of the variations of Blackness in my own family.
Okay, and then the variations again. See, he's being slick, and I'm not sure that Cam is aware of all of this. But and most people are not, if they're not ensconced in Black studies for a certain amount of time with a certain perspective and clear about who this man is and what he's just done. By saying what he's just saying, he's setting himself up because, again, remember, his issue is, as he's admitted, as to the reason he wrote his last book, he wants to proudly display the variety of Blackness that would allow for his variety to be accepted, which is one that is critical of the radical form symbolically, politically, of expressing one's Blackness internationally in the world, et cetera, and so forth. So he wants to present this variety, this because again, it happens more and more as I think about it. Glenn Ford was right. When people in the Black community make this proclamation that most in the conservative and liberal wing want to make about Black people are not a monolith, that is an anti-political. It is a politically weakening position to take vis-a-vis how race has been constructed and the communities have been pitted against one another. Having a Black bloc would be valuable to the Black community. It is those who prefer the political and social and certainly financial integration into a broader capitalist society who want to project this. We're not all together, because what they're really saying is, I'm not with them and I'm with you, great boss. So that's what he's really saying.
Avi, it's nice to meet you. Appreciate you taking some time to talk to me today.
Of course.
I have done a little bit of prep leading up to this, and your story is mind-blowing, so I'll start there. I was fascinated by the article you wrote about the last few years of your father's life when it comes to like assisted living and having to stretch those expenses. And I really just wanted you to start off by telling me a little bit about the person your father was.
My dad was many different people.
Yes.
He was, you know, it's funny, like when somebody dies who's in the public eye, you are.
Oh my God. By the way, so again, no disrespect particularly to Cam, but this is super boring and super disinteresting. And I am lamenting the fact that we're going to get even less time for them, or maybe it's a good thing for them to spend less time distorting and disturbing what would be an appropriate analysis of Black and Jewish history in this country and relationships. But yeah, this is
that person that the world is mourning, but at the same time, that's not the guy that I knew in a way. So it's a strange thing. So I think there was the public dad that the world knew, the civil rights activist, peace activist, human rights activist, et cetera, et cetera. And then there was just, my dad, who I called Abba. In Hebrew, that's how you say dad. And that's who he was to me. I mean, all of his civil rights stuff happened before I was born.
This is a good point,
So,
actually, to think
for
about as he talks
me,
about it.
he certainly never stopped being who he was. The causes may have changed. He was very much who he was. He was always a rabbi, first and foremost, I think. Even at home, he was still a rabbi, which really just means my teacher. And he absolutely was my teacher. Everything that I know, not everything, but a lot of what I know came from him directly on the long walks that we would take every day, every summer. I would hear these stories. I grew up with the stories of the civil rights movement. And so for me, it was a very personal thing that I didn't realize the rest of the world.
And then what was his father's relationship to Dr. King's evolving radical politics? So he outlived King. So he would have been there for the whole time of King's life. So was he with King at the end politically? What did he think of those shifts from some of the early marches in the South and the big one in D.C. in '63? Those last 5 years were presented a marked radical change for Dr. King.
About. So just as an example, I mean, I remember being a third grader in elementary school, and I did a book report on Dr. King, and I went down to the school library and I took out a book and just like any kid just started thumbing through the book, looking at the pictures.
And then did his analysis of civil rights and King evolve past that third grade book
report? There was a picture
report?
of my dad raising his hand in a church in Albany, Georgia. And I think that's the first time that I connected the two men, that I understood that, the rest of the world knew about him too. And that I had to share him my whole life as a public figure. But my dad was a remarkable man.
Love that. Piggybacking directly off of that, and I've been thinking a lot about the connective tissue between the journeys that Black Americans have gone on in their civil rights journey and Jewish Americans as I studied more leading up to this. And there's things that I read that I wasn't taught as a person who took advanced history classes. And just a few examples, W.E.B. Du Bois being close friends with Joel Spingarn, who was the president of the NAACP. I didn't even...
And again, remember, Spingarn was a spy, and this was during Du Bois's, pun intended, darker days and darker period of military intelligence and involvement in the world wars. And it was not a relationship that would have survived Du Bois's evolving radicalism. So again, this is part of that mythologized connective tissue that Cam mentioned a moment ago, where the connective tissue that is promoted, as is the case here, is one that de-radicalizes Black movements and movements in general and becomes very pro-state, pro-war. Again, Spingarn was appointed by the state to spy on Du Bois and these movements. That's the relationship that is described here. And this is not, so again, if you are interested in Black communities and Jewish communities uniting and coming together and this, that, and the third, these histories should be challenged and critiqued. And the narratives around them should be challenged and critiqued.
There was a Jewish president of the NAACP at any point, and nobody told me that. Nobody told me the connection between your father and MLK. That had never been something that I was explicitly shown and told. The fact that two of the three men that were murdered in the Freedom Summer in '64 were Jewish men. You know what I'm saying? Like these specific details.
So Cam is saying what he learned from what he said he read in preparation for this. With all due respect, whatever he was reading it sounds like the promotional materials for that PBS series. He's just tracing what that series covered. He's not talking about any other forms of the relationships, some of which we covered and were provided by some of you, Big Pun in particular, but others of you in the comment section. So thank you very much for that. And again, everybody who sees this, who hasn't, please go see that series. That is the series of my reviews of this PBS series, linked in the show description to this. And some of the context I'm bringing here can be discovered and followed up on.
Something that I was privy to, despite the fact that I was in advanced history courses, I was in African American history courses. Why do you think that these details are not taught in a way that is widely accessible?
They are. The details that he just covered are the widely accessible narrative details that are promoted so that we don't get certainly the radical exchanges. Again, we don't get the all of those more critical radical engagement between Black communities and Jews, which you would find in socialist and communist struggles, in labor struggles, in Black liberation and Black power struggles. That's where you would find all of that and more important connective tissue. These histories are widely accessible and are often promoted as the dominant view of these interactions.
How much time we got? First of all, you're not alone, obviously. Most people don't know this history. And I don't fault them for that. It's not taught. As to why it's not taught, gosh, I don't know. All I can tell you is that there are certain forces in this country that would prefer that this history not be known and not be taught.
So again, I know it's easy in this time and place to say this is the Trump world causing this problem, and they obviously are condemning and attacking all progressive thought and whatever. But Cam is now well past college graduate age. Others well past would have grown up under various other administrations, and in many cases, predominantly under Democratic Party administrations, where the system of education could have been improved. But what I'm arguing is that I think both of them are wrong here, and that this version of the history is promoted and is more often and more likely known to the extent anything about these relationships are known. Not enough to counteract the more popular mythologies, starting with, of course, as I've been saying, with the Bible, but it's not this version that is suppressed, because now they're presenting it as if PBS and Gates have excavated some radical history, unearthed some radical history, and that's just not what's going on here.
I think, unfortunately, politics have taken a serious turn towards divisiveness, keeping communities apart. It's a divide and conquer. I think to some extent that's what's going on. And I think to some extent, frankly, if I'm being honest, the relationship isn't what it once was.
And then we also just showed how Henry Louis Gates, I put it on my Instagram, it's out, is sitting down with Greenblatt, Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL. So to my point, if Jews as a community wanted Black people and others to have a better understanding of these histories, and this version I think has been well imposed, why hasn't more been done educationally, as instead of calling out the rising Black new anti-Semitism and calling out Farrakhan every 5 minutes and Kanye every 5 minutes and whomever else every 5? Why don't you spend more time promoting these histories? I don't, and promoting the use of social media instead of to condemn pro-Palestinian activism and to promote Zionism, to promote a more. But again, they're not interested. This is such their involvement. I don't believe Cam's involvement is disingenuous, though I don't. But as much as I try to avoid assessing intent, their involvement and Gates in that exchange with Greenblatt exposes it, if it wasn't already exposed. The fact that he called himself an intellectual entrepreneur 30 years ago and proudly has maintained that label exposes Gates as disingenuous in these spaces. But
and so that both sides have.
And you see how they show Stokely, who they would call Stokely, Kwame Ture, and Black Power as at the moment, and Cam, I'm hoping Cam, I'm hoping he didn't fall for the, like, to show that clip at the moment he's talking about the divisiveness is again disingenuous, but they're pointing back to the PBS series. Now, if Cam did put it in the editing, it makes my point about the diabolical nature of these media product. Because then they become the baseline from which other people like Cam James go and use that narrative and then hear the footage at that exact precise moment that they would have wanted and that they used in their own PBS series to say it was the Black radicalism that was divisive and threw the whites out and upset the liberal Jews and others so much who were so committed to the civil rights. So, I mean, this is the reverberating impact that I constantly want to complain
moved
about.
On. I think that's sad. And one of the things that I've dedicated my life to is to rebuilding that bridge.
Really?
But this is a tremendously important and mostly unknown history. And I should say that this is a history that goes both ways. It's not just about, there were at least 4 founders of the NAACP who were Jewish that I can name. You mentioned Joel Spingarn. Joel Spingarn and his brother, between them, were presidents and board chairs of the NAACP for, I think, almost 40 years.
And again, how many Black members of the boards or the leadership of any Jewish organization for liberation, or in other words, the ADL, the JDL, whomever, pick one, whatever. Like who among them have had this many Black members of their leadership?
Arthur has his name on a building.
So, didn't he start that segment by saying it's not just one way? Or did he, in other words, and maybe I misinterpreted that to say he meant he was going to discuss some exchange, there's a word I'm missing, but partnership but he meant it wasn't just one way that Jews were helping Black people.
Howard University, which is a HBCU, like
the highest award that an African American can win from the NAACP is called the Spin.
Same with the Omegas, the Qs, and this is part of the problem with these organizations. And part of the problem with what are the histories and the purpose and function of HBCUs. This is exactly the problem that Black Power and Black radical movements have and others have looked to address, and why liberal and conservative Zionist Jews and others have constantly wanted to put limits on that, and by bringing us back to this history, this one moment where a handful of Jews were put in inappropriate positions of power in Black liberation or civil rights efforts. And that one moment in time is just being dragged all over the place and being used to mask every other form of the relationship. And this is what does leave room for the very flawed, but also pointing to accuracy. It's a flawed approach based in some degree of accuracy. That is the secret relationship of Blacks and Jews that the Nation of Islam put out. But because of this kind of effort and these kinds of efforts, we are denied so much of what should be the gap-filling analyses that I've been arguing we do not have in terms of understanding Jews and their relationship to Black people and so much more. And Jews in themselves, or ourselves, understanding more of what is and having a better analysis of themselves.
And metal, right? And and nobody knows who these guys were.
No, they don't, and they should know that they were put there to spy on and suppress Black radicalism.
What I'd like to say is that this isn't, as a white Jewish guy, I don't feel it's my place to jump and shout about, look how much Jews were involved in the civil rights movement, et cetera, et cetera. That's true. But what I try and emphasize when I talk about this is I talk about how the relationship was always a mutual relationship. You would be hard-pressed to find someone who is a more ardent Zionist, for example, than Dr. King. Now, what Zion...
Wow. That is entirely factless and baseless. And this is why I asked a moment ago, did you learn anything from your father and King's Evolving Radicalism? I'll put the link in the show description. Black Power in Palestine, the Fishback, I believe, I forgot his book is what I was referencing at the time. King was not this ardent, blind Zionist being described here, and in fact said unequivocally in 1967, if this problem of in the Middle East is to be solved, Jews are going to have to give the land back. So, and there's a lot more nuance here in terms of why King was as defensive of Jews in Israel as he was, as the black left and others were moving more decidedly and aggressively in defense of Palestinians. But that's not being reflected here. So that is a patent historical falsehood, an absolute historical falsehood being perpetrated right here.
It meant to Dr. King, and what Israel was in Dr. King's day versus today are two different stories. Nevertheless,
they're not two different stories, and that's why King's position on this was shifting, and why he said what he said about the land, and why the Black Power movement at the time was already making the colonial equivalences that the PBS series even does acknowledge, passingly, but they acknowledge the colonial connections that were being made, the connective tissue, the accurate connective tissue being developed there. So this is patently false.
If you believe, as I believe, and as Dr. King believed, and as my dad believed, that Zionism is simply the belief that the state of Israel should exist, just like every other I country, Italy, Ireland, Indonesia, India.
That's not, first of all, maybe those countries shouldn't either. Not maybe. They're all the font in one way or another of European imperialism. So we do need a new reorganization of the world and its resources. But this is not what King was supportive of. Absolutely not. And I'm sure he won't point to any literature. But this is just unfortunate. That's all.
Ivory Coast, Iran, Iraq, just the same way that they all have a right to exist, so does Israel. That's all.
Ivory Coast, Iran, and Iraq. Would he really mean that? I know he's trying to do the I thing, because Israel doesn't think Iran has a right to exist. And the Ivory Coast is, again, he's naming what it was called because of what it meant to the European conquerors. These are not authentically liberatory geopolitical entities. So we should not want there to be an Ivory Coast as currently constructed. Now, the criticism is different. Obviously, the Ivory Coast is not a menace in the world that Israel is. But the point is, they're all born out of the same construct and serving the same purpose, just doing their different functions within that imperial order. But that's what should be held up for criticism here. Not to say King said Israel should have a right to exist, which is, even if he did, even if he was the Zionist that this man is saying he was, which he was not, King would just have been wrong. And we, in 2026, would say, with all due respect, and we appreciate your contribution, Dr. King, but as is the case in other areas of his work and life, he was wrong. Was he as wrong as this man is right here? Not even close.
And as it means to me, that's what it meant to Dr. King. And
no,
by
it didn't.
That definition, no question, he spoke publicly many, many times about his support for the state of Israel. And in fact, the state of Israel would never have come into being, probably, were it not for the efforts of Ralph Bunche. There's another name that most people don't know. Ralph Bunche was the U.S. ambassador to the UN.
Again, following the PBS series again, and this should be something held up for criticism, not
helped
celebration.
Negotiate the end of Israel's war of independence. And were it not for his efforts, Israel might.
And somebody can let me know in the comments, what did Bunch say, even in his liberalness? What did he say, did he think he would get for black people here for his support of Israel there?
Have come into being. People don't know his name today. They don't remember that history. You know, I could go on and on and on. There are multiple examples, and not just historical examples, contemporary examples of people like Dr. Gates, for example, or Van Jones, or Tyler Perry. You know, I could.
Henry Louis Gates, Van Jones, and Tyler Perry. Cam, brother, he is confessing. He is confessing that these are the preferred Negroes we want to celebrate and hold up. Come on, son. Maybe Cam, I'm gonna flip my view on this. Cam is doing us a favor. Cam set this up to set them up.
Name you a dozen African Americans who have been incredible defenders of Jews and the Jewish people. And so it's always been
Gates, Van Jones,
a mutual
Tyler Perry.
relationship. And I think people need to be reminded of that when they're reminded that this history happened, that this history existed.
Now, like my godfather says, shout out to Tom Porter. That's your team? Who's on my team? Who are the anti-Zionist black folks then and now? Malcolm, Kwame Ture, Jared Ball, the undefeated chat watching this, Black Liberation Media. Come on, son. And honestly, I'm drawing a blank. Like, how many people at this point would we be able to list are critical of the Zionist project, and who would be on that team? But give me, and Dr. King's on my team, by the way. That's a lie what they were just saying. Dr. King's on my team, and he was very clear on that, and would have likely been more clear had he not been shot. But Malcolm was clear, Ture was clear, Asada was clear, Mumia is clear, Leonard Peltier is clear, David Gilbert is clear. I mean, we were just talking about David Gilbert looking at the relationship of anti-Zionism to Jews participating in black liberation. Come on, son. So you can have your team. You get your starting five and I get mine, and we will run you off the court all day, every day. Please.
In case it wasn't obvious from the intro, this interview was produced alongside the team behind PBS's latest documentary series, Black and Jewish America, an Interwoven History.
So this is even more insidious. So no wonder he's got the footage, the headliners, and the same narrative. The same people are putting this together. Oh, this is oh damn, this is just worse than I thought.
Aired earlier this month. You've seen footage from the trailer throughout. I was fortunate enough to get a lot of time with Avi and a quick question in with Dr. Gates. That being said, both of them absolutely put me on game.
My father had...
No, they didn't. They are not putting you on game, my man. They are walking you away from the game and taking the ball out your hand.
Cousin who passed. It never occurred to him. Or my grandfather. It never occurred to them. They were proud to be Negro, even though they looked white, phenotypically white. So without learning it in school, as I eventually would, I was raised to understand that race was a social construct. That race was something that one embraced willingly or had.
It's not embraced willingly. It's imposed, and then there is no there is no consent. You can't give consent.
Imposed on one from the outside. If you study,
it's always imposed from the outside. But the point is, what is the best way to analyze it and deal with it? It's not to suppress the radical responses to it so that you can be your intellectual entrepreneur and make money. in presenting a palatable version of these histories and that social construct so that those who made the construct and benefit most from the construct don't get upset at you.
The Jewish people. They're Ashkenazi Jews, they're Sephardic Jews. They're Jews that look like you and me. And they're Jews who look the opposite of you and me. That this.
And what is the difference in their experience? How does that social construct play out? Because your series never deals with that. The series does not deal with the different ways that the social construct of race plays out within this diverse Jewish community. That's not how it. That's not at all what the series looks to do, and doesn't use that difference to bring legitimate connection to the black community. It's being used to tell the black community, don't be mad at Jews because some of them are black too, which is, or don't be too critical of your interaction as a community with Jews as a community because some of them are black too. Or Jews, you don't have to be too critical of your whiteness and white supremacy because you've allowed some in the black world to be considered Jews too. Not to experience the life that you experience, but nonetheless.
To identity. When I was a grad student in Cambridge, and near where you went to middle school.
Mm-hmm. Why does he have to bring this up all the time?
I had a couple friends who happened to be Jewish. And I remember that they had a big argument one night about whether being a Jew was a religious term, a religious concept, or cultural concept. Yeah. And one of my friends said he wasn't even Jewish because to be Jewish meant that you had to be religious and you had to believe in Judaism. Mm-hmm. So he was just a human being. So years later, I get a phone.
And by the way, I'm just noticing again, this video is titled Black and Jewish America, Shared History and Unique Tensions. The tensions really aren't unique, and the history is damn sure not shared. The tension is, as Baldwin summarized years ago, Jews are white, and white people in the United States are anti-black. That's the tension. The shared history is all of it is taking place within the internal settler colonial situation here of the United States, as is the case with everybody else here.
And it's this guy. And I said, what's up? And he said, oh, my wife just had a baby. And I said, what'd you name the baby? He said, Moses.
Well, Moses would have been an African if he had existed, which he didn't. But that's a whole other thing. So it makes sense that and you could read, Gates could read the very Jewish Freud's Moses or monotheism for some fascinating analysis of that question. What happens to Jews when their foundational figure is not theirs and is in fact an African?
And I go, hey,
or worse, as I'm saying, and I think most honest researchers seem to be saying, Moses didn't exist.
Weren't Jewish. You go, oh man, that was back then. I think that having a cultural tradition that you can embrace and celebrate, but also transcend, is very important because we are not just one thing.
He keeps saying that. So what is the cultural tradition that black people have that he wants to transcend? Does he even acknowledge this? Because he just wants to transcend it. He just wants to get away from it so that he can get to this point about we're not just one thing.
Not just about looking back at history. It's why we're looking back. Mm-hmm. It's looking back so that we can move forward. Yeah, that's really the idea.
Right. And that's the political purpose of history. That's the political purpose of narrative. To rebrand the past in such a way that you shape the present and can manipulate the future. This is not, so this is, it's not, he's being honest, it's just not being interpreted or framed properly.
Said that beautifully. I think speaking of, reminding us, looking forward and looking back, as a people, naturally a people who have endured something like the Shoah and have fought alongside the black community for civil rights.
So why is it the Shoah for the Jews and not the Ma'afa for the black folks?
You'd react strongly to the violation of those civil rights elsewhere.
except Palestine.
Has that effort been seen in the pursuit of liberation in Palestine?
Oh, good question, Cam.
It's a complicated question.
It's a good question, and you're about to complicate the answer because instead of just saying no, you're going to give some nonsense.
And, I think to some extent, we're just here to deal with the easy stuff like racism and anti-Semitism. We're not going to solve Middle East peace.
It's not funny.
Look, I think most people don't do nuance. I think most people don't.
Your series doesn't do nuance. Your history here doesn't do nuance. Your false claims that King was a Zionist avoids nuance.
Distinguish between the state of Israel and the Israeli government. I'm a tremendous critic of the Israeli government. I certainly don't condone what happened in Gaza on any side of the equation, nor did my dad. My dad was a huge proponent of a Palestinian state and of...
Do the Palestinians want that? Do radical Palestinians and activists want that? Should the world want that? I've seen nothing from my side of the political fence. I've seen nothing but criticisms of that, because what does that Palestinian state look like? What does it look like, especially given what is being done to Gaza and the West Bank now? Like, what does it look like? When the claims, which I don't believe are going to happen that way, but when the claims that Trump is going to create the Sierra, not the Sierra, the Riviera on the West Bank and Gaza, whatever he was saying, all that nonsense he's saying, where is this Palestinian state going to be?
Peace movement. I went with my dad on a peace mission to Gaza in the mid-1990s. There's that famous picture of my dad next to Dr. King, but there's another picture of my dad next to Yasser Arafat of the PLO. So you don't make peace with your friends, you make peace with your enemies. But, obviously I condemn that. And I think the same way that...
What does he condemn? His father meeting with Arafat? Or is he trying to say October 7th?
The Kippur War led to the Camp David Accords. I believe that this Gaza war is horrific and tragic.
It's not a war, it's genocide.
It has been with, horrific loss of life on both sides, particularly in Gaza.
On both sides. We're doing the Trumpian both sides thing.
That will prove to be the precursor to a broader peace and eventually a Palestinian state.
Have you been encouraged by what you've seen from, what's come out of the attempts at peace thus far?
It's still early days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just did a quick look just to see where it is, and forgive the number. At least 75,000 Palestinians have been killed, and at the most 2,000 or so Israelis since October 7th. This is not a both sides thing.
I'm guardedly optimistic. My dad would always say, talk about his optimism. He was definitely a glass half full,
and that doesn't even count for the wounded and all the others. So that's just
kind of guy, and so am I. I think we need to, to build on what exists now, and hope that it has a ripple effect, not just with Israel and Palestine, but in the region.
Absolutely, and to bring it back to stateside, what I've had limited interaction in my life with the Jewish community, and the more I learn about our kind of interconnected fabric, the more I walk away with a deeper sense of appreciation.
I do think it's funny when people without black friends will say African American, and people who don't know Jews will always say Jewish because they feel like saying Jew is a derogatory thing. And I just think it's funny. And of course, the way I was raised, Jew is what it is. My mother was like, it's not Jewish. I'm a Jew. And is that people are used to hearing all the epithets usually that prefix the term, so they don't want to they don't want to say it. So I just always think of that. It's like, tell me you don't know any Jews by saying Jewish, and tell me you don't know any black people by saying African American. But anyway, whatever. But that's my point. Also, the two communities don't really interact like that.
People like your father and people like you who continue to carry that legacy forward. And I'd say, if you could say anything to people who watch this from either community who see a reason to vilify members of the other community based on stereotypes, based on conspiracy theories, what would you say to them?
So Cam, I'm gonna answer that question. I'm gonna pretend like you asked me that question. What would I say to them? I would say, revisit the history for its accuracy, challenge the dominant narrative, get past the surface level, empty claims of relationships that have occurred at these most liberal exchanges and moments, and then take those moments of overlap and go in the other direction radically, that is. So in other words, for instance, when they promote the picture of Goodwin, Schwerner, and Cheney, and the two Jews and the brother who were killed, that was a rare moment of solidarity expressed at a sort of a peak of political engagement at the time. Yes, there were more radical forms of black and Jewish interaction, but my point is that it was like a peak of a moment. And what has happened since then is that moment has been dragged by liberals and expanded as the blanket that is put on both communities in these histories as the claim of what that and the only form of that relationship or that interaction, and used to deny more radical forms, and then to promote and to deny the more hostile realities in terms of the interaction between the two communities. So that's one thing that I would want to hear someone encourage, and to say, go to the radical traditions within each community and find where meaningful overlap with the other and other communities have actually taken place. That's the only place you're going to find them. So Jews, go into the radical history of Jews. That's where you'll find meaningful solidarity with black folks and others. Black folks do the same thing. Everything else is silly. Everything else is silly and useless and being manipulated for truly ignoble purposes.
I have a friend who's African American and Jewish.
African American and Jewish. So I can tell you right now, that person is not your friend. If there is a true friendship there, they are super, super, super liberal or conservative, even reactionary, and might even, dare I say, have some issues with negative self-concept in some form or fashion. African American and Jewish. If he had said, "Man, one of my friends is a black Jew," maybe I'd have believed it. But then again, everything that starts with these kind of situations with, I have a friend who's, all right, but let's see what this African American Jewish person.
She's also a PhD who specializes in the psychology of racism and prejudice. So she knows what she's talking about.
Who is this?
Got a foot in both worlds. She's got a line that I really try and live by, which is, if you're breathing, you're biased.
Okay.
And I think we need to just take a beat and acknowledge that we all come to any interaction with preconceived notions.
So wait a minute, this expert friend with a foot in both worlds, your African-American Jewish friend, elite educated intellectual, this is all you're taking from her? We all have biases? And your engagement with her or her work hasn't led you to anything beyond that? Including something more meaningful to say about Israel, Palestine, or black people and Jews? Like I said, I don't think my man, you might need to double check that friendship claim.
Prejudices with biases. That's human. I think human beings evolved to see difference. If we didn't, we wouldn't know that was a lion in the grass, right? So we're tuned in to difference, particularly differences of color and shade and all of that. So we probably can't avoid that. That's inevitable, I think.
History shows, and maybe this friend of yours would tell you that with all that elite education, that historically this version of racism we're operating off of today wasn't always the case. So there is historical examples of where these differences in shade didn't result in the kinds of hostility that we're talking about today. But whatever.
What we can avoid is making assumptions and judgments, snap judgments, based on that limited information. We've got our prefrontal cortex here that can help us sift that information and say, hold on a minute. Like, I'm not judging the person in front of me. First of all, I don't think we should judge people at all, but we're individuals. You and I are just two guys having a conversation.
We're just two guys having a conversation. Why? Theoretically, it's because one is a talented journalist and video editor who, for the most part, I think makes pretty good videos that are helpful. This one I can't put in that category. And the other one is supposed to be this expert in these histories with a particular special connection through his father to Dr. King. So if it's just two guys sitting here chatting, why the hell have you been given all this funding and resources, and why are we being asked to tune in?
I think that if we would spend more time just talking to each other, getting to know each other, throw those preconceived notions aside, that's where the hope is, especially.
So this is why it doesn't happen, because if that were to really happen, and I have a lot of anecdotal personal experience with this, and so I admit I don't know how else I would prove this point, but I am confident through what I've read in literature, what I've experienced anecdotally, and what I'm seeing everywhere else. These media products are produced to suppress, distort, discourage further interaction, or to only allow for any interaction to be based on this fallacy or these series of fallacies perpetrated in this discussion and more in the series that they're promoting. Because if the two communities really sat down and started to have meaningful conversations with one another, and to the extent when they do, every once in a while you get some radical outcomes. For the most part, you get hostility and tension, or just flat out animosity. Because that real, sustained, meaningful conversation would mean the nuance old boy wants to suggest is lamentably lost. I don't even know if that's a word. That he lamented is lost. That nuance would cause a lot of would lead to a lot of conflict and would force communities, Jews included, maybe even specifically, to reassess themselves and what team they're on and what is their historical relationship to the ruling elite and to those who are more oppressed. What international politics are they supporting? Like all of these things, the Zionism, all of this stuff would be called into question. But then ultimately, I think it just all returns back to the biblical mythology, and somebody's just going to say, but y'all killed our savior, and that's really what it is.
Younger people who are going to be watching this. Not that the older people can't change too.
Right.
I've seen tremendous changes. George Wallace, who was one of the biggest segregationists ever.
Yeah.
He changed.
Did he? In what way?
Apologized. So if George Wallace could do it, I think.
But what is the change that he's saying is necessary when it comes to black people and Jews? or Israelis and Palestinians. Who needs to apologize? There's no. I know you're not saying black people and Palestinians need to apologize to somebody. So what are you saying? And are Jews? Does he really believe Jews as a collective body, nationally, or a diaspora, are ready to apologize to Palestinians? So it's not apologies we're talking about here. So what change needs to occur? This is my point. You going to stop voting for genocide and Zionism? You going to redistribute some of the wealth back to impoverished black communities? Like what are we talking about? What change? Who needs to apologize? And at the end of the day, who wants an apology? Who really wants an apology that doesn't come with something material?
Gen Z can certainly do it.
Absolutely. And I'm flattered that you think I'm Gen Z, or that I appeal to Gen Z.
I ask my students, what do you want on your tombstone? Here lies an African American. Is that the most important thing about you? It's one thing.
See that? Do you see? So Gates has his entire career, and one of the reasons why he stood against black studies is a denial of what is ultimately black people resisting the imposed negative identity that came with enslavement and colonization. So he's disrespecting a struggle of a people to say, I don't want to be called a slave. I don't want to be treated and owned as a slave. I don't want to be named a slave. I don't want to be named Richard B. Moore, one of the legendary nationalist figures that Gates has worked his whole life and career to make sure nobody knows anything about. Slaves and dogs are named by their masters. Free people name themselves. Gates is disrespecting this whole history and struggle over black people reclaiming a wholesome identity born out of a humanity, a radical African humanity in some cases, but a humanity that had been destroyed through enslavement and colonization, or attempted to be destroyed and labeled. And a lot of people don't even want to be African American. Black had its own revolutionary meaning and concept, although some of us do agree or moved by Dr. Clarke's, everybody's identity should reflect back to land, history, and culture. So black people have to be seen as African. But the point is, Gates is disrespecting that. You just want to have African American on your tombstone? And then he ignores the radicalism that would have been found in the recently passed late great Jamil Al-Amin. Black is beautiful, but it's insufficient. So his whole thing here, in the guise of some black Jewish relationship historical thing, his whole purpose here is to get black people off of any sort of radical anything. We're all different. We're not all just one thing. We're not just black. We're all these other kinds of things. We're different shades. I got a Jewish grandfather, or I got a white grandfather, or whatever. It's like,
It's important about me being an African American. But
and how many black people put that on their tombstone? Do any of us know any black people whose tombstone says, "Here lies a great African American"? Who does that? So he's creating a straw argument against. He's
my newly discovered Irish great grandfather. That's a key aspect of me. The fact that
so now you're Irish. Now you Irish. When that Cambridge cop dragged you out your house because your neighbor said a black man is breaking in, they didn't call it, say Irishman was breaking in. Even me, with my fair, damn near passing self, Every single time, particularly when it comes to authorities. They know. They call it out. They're not saying, oh, the half Jew we pulled over and the
We're Episcopalian.
this
In
is
fact,
so
I like
bad.
to shoot pool. I love to fish, and I was raised fishing. I love to read literature. I was raised to be a doctor, but got a PhD in English. You know,
I hate black people. I hate black radicalism. I hate black studies. That could be on your tombstone, Gates. Here lies the most popular black studies professor who hates black studies.
I love science. I'm so glad that I have a TV show where DNA becomes important.
By the way, he didn't bring that up. Where you're talking about Jews, the culture, is it a religion, is it a race? Why didn't you bring up that it's a DNA category? My DNA, when I did my ancestry, it says Ashkenazi Jew, 50%. And it went up from 46 to 50% since I first did the test. How? Why? I don't know. But how come you don't bring that up? Because to me, and unfortunately, the Alzheimer's kind of interrupted my jokes and my running thing with my mother here. But what was trying to tell her. You always talking about you a Jew by culture, but you don't believe in the religion. But then why is it a DNA category?
Love literature, and that's the thing that floats my boat. I think that the popularity of Finding Roots stems from two things. One, that it proves that we're a nation of immigrants, and the thing that made
we are a nation of immigrants. Now you're doing that nonsense too. So black people just immigrated here just like everybody else.
America great was that we're a nation of immigrants. Even our Native American sisters and brothers migrated across the Bering Strait 15,000 years ago.
Oh, now they're migrants too. The Bering Strait thing. So we just all. So then, why aren't Europeans migrants? Because everybody just walked out of Africa. So it's just a world of migrants and immigrants.
But the other thing is that at the level of the genome, we are 99.99% the same.
Absolutely.
And I think that defending the multiplicity in the definition of identity is key.
So I want you to go to the next. I can't even come up with the joke fast enough. Go to the next. I don't know. I wanted to say something else, but go stand on the corner of. I'm sorry. Just go anywhere and run that nonsense. Go stand at the Israeli border and talk about at the genomic level, we're all 99% the same.
Producing a harmonious society. Defending your right to choose your sexuality or to your religion, or not to walk away from religion, but to choose your friend and choose your allies across these supposedly fixed, essentialized boundaries, including your spouse.
He used the word essentialism again. So one of his, that was always a key buzzword against African-centered thought, Afrocentricity, Africana studies, Black studies, and all these other variants. They're just essentializing race. They're essentializing. It's not they're essentialists. So again, you really would have to know more about Gates and the longevity of his career and his argumentation to see how all of these he's just replaying all the greatest hits in the guise of Black people and Jews, which has not been much of the discussion here at all.
Right.
If that's the way your heart goes.
Yeah.
I think that's important too. So on the one hand,
and of course it makes sense. Gates, I can't, when is the last time Gates sat down? Does anybody know, does Gates ever talk to anybody who knows about the field of Black studies? Who are not beholden to him for jobs and book contracts? I mean, because he's very good with the novices at running this nonsense, and with the popular, the Stephen Colbert's and all that kind of stupid stuff. But this is. So I just hope, Cam. I don't know if you're going to see this, my man. You don't owe me anything. We don't, But I do hope at some point you take that analytical lens that you bring to your other subject matter to this. And I hope you use this this interview in this video as a springboard to some sort of critical reflection on where you are in all of this. And because from my vantage point, Cam and his platform are being used and manipulated as another way of popularizing among a younger generation and a blacker audience Gates's nonsense. In many ways, this is kind of a similar problem where, as I've argued about John McWhorter, Peniel Joseph, all these, they don't have any connection to the black community. They don't really have black audiences. So for their white sponsors and investors to find value in them, they have to find ways to be seen talking to other black people. And that's what I see is happening here, that Gates does not have an actual black audience. He has not an actual connection to certainly any black community and political struggle. And hopefully younger communities and younger folks are bypassing him. Unfortunately, too many of them are getting picked up by his disciples like Peniel Joseph and others. But we would want him to disappear as much as possible. But he's doing a lot to maintain his influence, his negative influence and impact on black studies, on intellectualism, period, on certainly radical politics and critical thinking. And it's, oh man.
I love the embrace of cultural tradition. On the other hand, I will fight to my death against any essentialized notion of race, that it's a fixed thing, that you're locked in, and that you're, because I have...
Nobody does that. This has been a false straw argument against black studies and black radicals that he's been using for a long time. They essentially, no, African people saying we are African people and want to be respected and appreciate those traditions and cultures for what they are and their contribution to civilization is not essentializing anything. White supremacy has essentialized race. The racial constructs that he's talking about were an offshoot, an emanation of European imperialism to essentialize and categorize. Again, Marcel Rosa Salas's book, Total Market American, shows how that is happening today through advertising and marketing. They've genrefied us so that they can manipulate our public opinion socially and socially engineer our politics. And so it's that essentialism that black studies and Africana studies and black radicalism and new formations of identity, the new African struggle, all of that stuff has been looking to explode. He is wanting to return us to that with this nonsense about we're all these different things. We're all these different things. What would happen if has he ever had an Israeli do a DNA test? And what would happen if they had found a drop of Palestinian blood in them? Would they be saying, "Oh, now I can see the rightfulness of their cause and the incorrectness of our Zion"? I mean, no, of course they wouldn't be doing any of that. Probably throw themselves. They would do they would do what Chris Rock said in his joke years ago about Oprah if she woke up tomorrow, about Warren Buffett if he woke up tomorrow with Oprah Winfrey's bank account. He would jump off the roof and slit his throat on the way down. Oh, I only got $4 billion. Ah!
Some Yoruba in my DNA, that means I've inherited these cultural traits that I can, play the drum, talking drum like a Yoruba.
That's a good point.
But it's not a good point, Cam, because that's not how cultural traditions and culture is passed on. It's not because the blood was in you that you did it. It's the unspoken cultural traditions that are passed on through black communities, through diaspora, that show your Africanness, or would show it if you haven't worked so hard and assiduously to destroy it and suppress it. So he's complete. This is what I'm saying. Henry Henry Louis Gates hates Kwame Ture so much that he could never appreciate the brilliant line that Ture used to use, that the job of the conscious is to make the unconscious conscious of their unconscious behavior. To point out the Africanisms that they're already practicing, the tendencies towards pan-Africanism that already exist and just have to be nurtured and politicized. Instead, he takes an axe. He's taking an intellectual axe to it.
That's like racist rubbish.
Sure.
It's not racist rubbish. You're promoting and defending racist rubbish.
It's very important that we keep.
In fact, all this misrepresentation of Dr. King, it was Dr. King himself who said a version of, don't blame me for the problems of society because I've called out and addressed them. That's what Gates is doing here. The essentialism is in the whites, in the white supremacy, in the colonialism. You've now said, because black people and others have said, don't call me that. It's also contradicts your whole previous point about people selecting their genders and preferences. Would you say that trans people are essentializing their gender and sexuality? Is the gay community essentializing? Is that what you're saying? Or no? Or were you just a few minutes ago saying no? They are asserting their right to themselves. That's all black people have been trying to do. But you've been working against it because, as you said, you felt bullied by black people who were greeting you with brother and would dare wear some African clothing instead of a Western European suit.
Two things in mind at the same time.
Terrible.
So yeah, your father, Rabbi Israel Dresner, was a close friend with MLK.
And what does that really mean?
I learned a lot about MLK growing up, but I wasn't familiar with all the interplay between these two communities through these two men. Could you speak a little bit to his leadership in that effort? He was known as the most arrested rabbi of the movement, and a couple of times at King's behest to help move the cause forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my dad was very proud of that moniker. He would always say that not only was he the most arrested rabbi, but he was the most arrested and jailed rabbi. Because it's one thing to get arrested and it's catch and release.
100%.
It's another thing to actually go to jail. So he was very proud of that fact. And that's kind of a big ticket item. When I was researching for the documentary.
By the way, I looked it up. That picture they keep showing of his father next to Dr. King was in 1963. So I'm going to just put it out there until someone can show me and confirm for me something else, that since they've not pointed to it, that his father and Dr. King did not have a meaningful relationship in the last few years of King's life. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to wager that, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. In the end, it really doesn't matter. But I suspect that the relationship was more practical and based on a politics that his father thought King had, or that King had at the time, and that he would not have followed King. And he certainly would have not supported King in 1967 when King said, if Israel wants to solve and bring peace to this region, they have to give the land back.
I actually discovered that my dad was on the board.
And the link to the video I did that talks about King in Palestine will be in the show description. I just want to put that out there so you can go and see the receipts for yourselves if there's any, or just go read. Just go look it up. Don't take my word for it. I double dare you not to take my word for it. But I'll put the link in there.
Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Dr. King's organization.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the name, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and all of a sudden there's a northern rabbi. Right. That blew me away. I found that from the King Papers Project in Stanford when I was doing research. And my dad never mentioned that, not once, not ever. Dr. King would have said that my dad was the most active.
Did you see in those papers what King said about capitalism and socialism in the summers of 66 and 67? Where he called Andy Young a capitalist and said, I'm not? Where he said that the logic of white supremacy is genocide? When he said white people collectively had not psychologically organized themselves out of their own racism? Like, so what else did you discover? What was, whatever.
Rabbi. And I think that speaks volumes. I mean, I like football.
Yeah.
So I use an analogy that, I have no illusions about where my dad was in the pecking order. This is not like it's not a white savior story, right? I mean, Dr. King was the head coach. Ralph Abernathy was the offensive coordinator. And my dad was the clutch third down receiver that they would put in the game when they knew they needed that first down. They knew my dad could pick it up for them. I think, when you think about the story of civil rights and the black.
So since he brought up football, let's use the analogy King used. Because remember, King said after the signing of the 64 Civil Rights Act, he said celebrating that is like rushing the football to the 50-yard line and claiming a touchdown. So if we're doing that, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it right.
A lot of people make a big fuss, let's say, about the Leo Frank lynching, and I don't mean to belittle it.
Your series did.
In any way. But to the best of my knowledge, that's the only Jew who was ever lynched in all of American history. At least I can't name another, and I know this history pretty well.
Did you look into that history? Because there's some scandal behind that too, and I don't pretend to be an expert in it as well, but it was either Leo or the brother who were going to get snatched up, and it was because the brother told on him. Wasn't this even in his series? Didn't I see this in his series? Didn't your series get into this? That Leo might have been up to no good with the ladies in the spot and doing all that kind of stuff. Not that he deserved anything. Not that he deserved it. But you all put that in the series. Or some, now I'm getting confused with all the different things I've been looking at lately. But you all put some reference at least to Leo Frank in there to make the point that not that only one Jew was lynched, but that Jews also suffered. So this is actually kind of interesting. Maybe now I want to go back and look at how the series dealt with Leo Frank, because this seems to be an interesting rewrite. Because this point I know was not made in the series, that he was the only Jew to be lynched, and therefore let's not overdo it with the comparisons. Because your series put Leo Frank in there to make the comparison.
As opposed to the thousands and thousands of African Americans who were lynched during that period. Over 4,500 is one of the statistics that I've seen for how many were known.
6,500 Cam adds in there. Okay, well.
Were unknown. So, I don't think we should be focusing so much on that lynching other than to say that 4,500.
Yeah, an additional 2,000 between 1865 and 1876. And all those numbers are probably low.
Black people, and I can't tell you one of their names, I'm embarrassed to say. But people know about the Leo Frank lynching. Why? Because he was white, right? And and he also happened to be Jewish. We Jews have.
That, as much as I've been hating on, that is what I hate, I think, the most out of all of that. In a series and in a discussion that is supposed to be, that claims to be helping people to understand the histories and the relationship between black people and Jews, to say a line like that belies how disinterested Dresner here is in actually doing that work. He didn't just happen to be a Jew. And this is the point I've been complaining about in general for a long time. And admittedly, I need to do more to fill in some of the gaps myself, apparently. But why, it's not that he happened to be a Jew. There are very particular socioeconomic historical reasons why Leo Frank and other Jews were in that, and I think your series even does a little bit of this to explain why there were Jews there. What needs to be done more is what were their lives like? Why were they there? What was their situation? What were the reasons for their behavioral patterns? What were the reasons for their socioeconomic status and differences internally among themselves, and obviously with other Black people? And then what does that mean in terms of an impact on this fantasy and mythologized history and relationship? And what would a real understanding of the similarities and differences evoke and reveal and lead us to if the goal is some advanced form of unity, which, again, I know is not the goal of these products. But for the rest of us who might want a better world or a better analysis or a better level of interaction, a more radical form of interaction with other groups, whatever the purpose, or even if we just want to hate the other group, another group, or other groups from a distance, it's better. I still think it's better to have a more an elevated analysis of why those groups are there, even if it's just for the tactical purpose of hating them. Because again, I'm not here for let's all hold hands. I'm saying I do want us to be better and have a better understanding of why everybody ends up where they end up and why they do the things that they do. If there is a solution to be found out of all of this, it's going to come out of that level of understanding, not this stuff.
On the fact that we benefit from white privilege. There's nothing wrong with saying that. We do.
Well, duh.
But by the same token, white privilege isn't distributed equally. And unfortunately, Jewish history teaches us that we've never been fully accepted in any society for very long before the axe inevitably falls. And unfortunately, in that case, it fell on Leo Frank. But the point I'm trying to make there is that when...
And then what does that mean in terms of how Jews react to the society that would drop the hammer on one of them? Because that has a lot to do, for instance, with the Jews who went out and created Hollywood. A lot of what they were creating was not the Israel that his series says they were, but was other than, and it was an deracialized, assimilationist, essentialist, because they wanted to become anglicized and to disappear and to run away from the violence and hostility that they and their families suffered in Eastern Europe. They were not trying to create an overtly Jewish utopia. They were trying to create, for a handful of themselves, an elite oasis to disappear into. And as a result, we're willing to produce all of the forms of harm, psychic and otherwise, that Hollywood has and continues to produce.
People get arrested, when white people get hurt, when white people get killed, all of a sudden, white America and the media pay attention. That was true in King's day, and that's still true today. And so King knew that. King was a genius when it came to the media. TV was relatively new back then. Certainly when the Montgomery bus boycott started, it was relatively new. Most American households were just getting TV at that point in the mid-50s, and certainly by the early 60s, it was already much more established. King knew that, and he counted on the fact that images of whites being brutalized, being arrested, being jailed.
Yeah, and that's why he called your father.
Would bring the media. They would bring the newspapers and the news cameras. And my dad was one of those guys. Right. Unfortunately, back then it was mostly men. And he was proud to be one of those guys, but he took his marching orders from King. It was a story of allyship, not a white savior story. King told him where to be and when and what was needed. And it was my...
And again, what does this have to do with the communities? We get endless narratives and stories mythologizing the individual acts and behavior of a handful of, in this case, Jews. What does that mean in terms of the rest of the community? What did his family think about what he was doing? What did the rest of his family think about what he was doing? Was he celebrated in his community? What were what was, again, like, we don't get any of that because we're not supposed to, because this is a Gates-led PBS project that more and more is clearly meant to tell Black people to chill. I will look around to see if these two pop up on any outlets led by Jews that are targeting Jews, to see if they're doing the same kind of media hit to encourage Jews in the United States to be reminded of the contribution. But I suspect not. Or maybe they will be, because so many Jews, too many young Jews are headed towards a critique of Zionism, and they might need to, they say, no, they might need to run this nonsense. Remember, King was a Zionist too, so why would you? And maybe they need to hear from a Jew then, huh? Even if he was wrong. Mr. Dresner. But he wasn't. King was not a Zionist, just to be clear, to restate it.
And to get others to do the same, to recruit other rabbis, to recruit other whites who, frankly, were mostly Jewish. I mean, when you look at the Freedom Rides, my dad was on the first interfaith clergy Freedom Ride in 1961. 6 weeks after the first Freedom Ride left, when John Lewis and all the others got the hell beaten out of them. Yep. 6 weeks later, the first interfaith clergy Freedom Ride left. My dad was on it. 14 ministers, 7 African-American Protestant, 7 white Protestant, and 4 rabbis who were all white.
What does that do to those claims about the overrepresentation of Jews among whites in the civil rights movement? It's like, it probably still works. There are fewer Jewish rabbis than there would have been Christian and whatever, but it's still only 4.
And that was their mandate. Now, he didn't know King yet in 61, but that's one of the things that got my dad on Dr. King's radar, was that they were arrested in Tallahassee, Florida at the end of that Freedom Ride. Yep. And they had a Supreme Court case came from that, bearing my dad's name, Dresner et al. Versus Tallahassee. Took 3 years to wend its way through the courts. So in 1964, they were ordered to go back to jail. And Dr. King sent my dad a telegram in jail, which starts, you are the valiant ones. And my dad didn't think that he was valiant. He didn't think that he was a hero. He was doing the right thing.
I hear 64. Anything later than 64?
He would have done it regardless of who asked him. I mean, it happened to be Martin Luther King, so that's a bonus. But it was just the right thing to do. People like my dad recruited for Dr. King on his behalf. Dr. King asked my dad, because he knew he could count on him, to get other rabbis involved. My dad helped Dr. King organize the largest mass arrest of clergy in U.S. history to this day, in 1962 in Albany, Georgia.
62?
Dr. King had my dad organize the largest mass arrest of rabbis in U.S. history in 1964 in St. Augustine, Florida. And, and those are the big ticket items. Those are the things that got the newspaper headlines. Yeah. But honestly, my dad's involvement was so much broader and deeper than just the headline grabbing stuff. Mm-hmm. He fought to get a fair housing committee at his synagogue in Springfield, New Jersey, so that they could push for fair housing and push for Black people who lived in Newark for the most part, still do, to move into these, white
message, and still do. Message.
Suburbs. He traveled all across the country speaking at synagogues and at churches and raising money for the SCLC, Dr. King's organization. I mean, in today's dollars, my dad would have raised hundreds of thousands, if not millions, from his efforts, for the movement. That stuff didn't get the headlines any more than Stanley Levison's work with Dr. King got the headlines. But that's what movements are based on.
100%.
That groundwork.
That groundwork is necessary, and I think I can speak for, a broad contingent of the Black community that looks back on that history and is grateful that it happened and that that coalition formed when it did to help push us towards where we are today. The battle still continues, but we're only able to keep battling because all of that took place. So
You don't have to look like the culture to embrace it or celebrate it, And I enjoy going to Seder's, but I know I'm not Jewish because gefilte fish, it's not going to happen,
Gefilte fish is terrible. It's gross. But again, where's the value being brought to the experience and the history that we're supposed to be getting from this series and this discussion, that you like going to Seder's but don't like gefilte fish? It is nasty. I mean, but so what?
yeah,
But I equally despise okra.
fair
My
enough.
father used to say,
I'm not.
Of course he would have to throw in. Of course he would have to
he
do
said,
that.
you don't eat Negro, he used to say, you
Yeah.
don't like okra, but what's wrong with you? So
Exactly.
we can laugh about these things, but we're talking about the right of choice, the right to embrace the things that you value, the things that you love, and not to be pigeonholed.
So that's how he did it. So he's saying he's supporting LGBTQ and all of the, to say that because he too wants to say, I have a right to not be told how to be Black. That's his whole line. I have a right to be told how to not express my Black politics or my politics. I have a right to be an intellectual entrepreneur. I have a right to sell out and betray Black radicalism and Black liberation. I have a right to do all of that. That's what he's saying here.
Not to be defined as
And again, what the hell does this have to do with the quote unquote shared and unique histories and tensions between these two communities?
this is Black or not Black. What you like.
I'm trying to tell you, yes, it's more shocking when Ye says whatever he was saying about Jews, or when Kyrie was saying whatever he was saying about this documentary or Flat Earth, whatever the hell he was doing, or when Nick Cannon said whatever he said about Jews with Professor Griff. Like, all of that stuff is a mess. But none of it is as bad as what is being done here and in this series. It is these series and these dominant, prevailing, mythologized, anti-historical narratives that leave for all the room, for all the confusion, for all of the unanswered questions about the actual experiences of these communities and how they actually interact and why they are pitted against one another in the way that they have been. These discussions just encourage everybody to fall back into those biases that you said you were here to challenge, or to be left to find the Kyries and the Yays and everyone else to fill in the gaps, because y'all not doing anything. They're not telling us anything. So that's what I'm saying. That's why I said back when it was in the mix, I said, stop asking me, that one time that reporter was, stop asking me what I think about Ye. Because my answer is going to be, he's not the problem. The problem is this stuff. The problem is the ADL. The problem is the dominant narrative and approach that destroys any concept of these histories, and make sure that all the radical forms of analysis and interaction are erased.
And you don't like Coltrane, so you're not Black enough? That's ridiculous.
See, that's what I'm saying. Nobody was saying you're not Black enough because you don't like Coltrane. What they were saying is what the movement was trying to do, Skip, is tell Black people, or encourage Black people to think critically about, how do you know what you know and why do you like what you like? Why don't you know about Coltrane or the African contributions to history? Why don't you know about the other ways Black societies have conceived of themselves or identified themselves? Or why don't you know about the radical traditions in other politics? They're not saying, he's reducing it. He's essentializing their work by saying all they were trying to do is say, you have to like Coltrane, have an afro, wear a dashiki, put your fist up, and you can't mess with the snow bunnies, which we know. But that's what he's reducing it all to, and so that he can hold it up and say, I don't. We're so much more broad than that, and that's what Black studies and these movements were saying. We're so much more broad than this narrow American Negro that we've been told we are. Damn, Skip. But that's slick. He's no dummy. He found a new way to run the hustle.
You like bridge and not bid whist? Come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
Another slick thing. Why would a Black person know bridge and not bid whist? It's not about I'm Black because I play spades or bid whist, and I'm white because I play bridge. No, it's because those are the those are the games that arose in specific communities, socially constructed. So it makes sense that if you grow up in Black spaces or spend time in Black spaces, you would know bid whist or spades and not bridge. And that if you met a Black person who said, I only know how to play bridge, you might expect that they have spent most of their time in white company. It doesn't mean that they can't be Black or they're not, but it might lead to some jokes. You might have some fun, and it might mean that other aspects of the Black bridge player would reflect a worldview shaped by whiteness, like sitting here condemning Black radicalism and erasing history.
We have to fight for the right to be individual, no matter what our color.
Multiple things.
Yeah.
I think what you're speaking to more than anything
ridiculous.
is the right to be able to define for yourself what you are and what the full spectrum of what you are is.
Sure.
Nobody defines for themselves. We are defined by community, by society, and by against what we are not. So if anybody's out here thinking, I am individually selecting my politics, my race, my sex, my gender, all of that is nonsense. No, you're not. No, you're not. And what messes up most folks is that I'm not, and I'm talking to the straight folks. Yeah. Tip of the spear, chapter 5, boy. Better check it. All those manosphere types and all those super heteros. Better check it. If you real comfortable in your hetero-ness, chapter 5 shouldn't be a problem for you. But this dude is a mess. This dude is.
I appreciate you expounding so much on that, and I appreciate you spending some time with me, Dr. Gates.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
I know you did, because you got to run your hustle unquestioned, uncriticized, unfettered.
Hey, thank you.
I wanted to leave space for you to talk about anything you're working on or anything that you'd like to see in
what's
the
coming
months
next?
ahead.
I've got 3 different projects going on right now that all have to do with this theme. I've got a national Black Jewish Reconciliation lecture tour, which is funded by the Ford Foundation, where I'm going around the country partnering with an African American co-presenter everywhere that I go. And we have a Black co-sponsor and a Jewish co-sponsor. And not to say that there aren't plenty of Black Jews. There's so much intersectionality. There are more Black Jews than ever before.
I didn't
so
get
I
a
don't
call.
mean to speak of them, of us as if we're separate groups, because there's a lot of interplay.
I didn't get a call. But if I did, I would remind you that we are separate. It is separate. I'm not a reflection of some unified coming together of the two communities. I sit at the nexus of two hostile and put opposed to one another communities in the context of a settler colonial capitalist white supremacist construct. But I'm easily reached.
And so I'm going on this lecture tour talking about this all the time, talking about the alliance, talking about the history, but again, talking about the history with the goal.
We don't need a reconciliation tour. If anything, there needs to be a reconciliation commission. It's like
to move forward. So that's one project. I'm making a documentary about my dad and his work with Dr. King called The Rabbi and the Reverend. And we're still shooting that. We got a couple shoots coming up. I was at a shoot in Selma, Alabama,
and I promise you it ends by 1964.
ago, which was amazing. It was my first time in Selma. My dad delivered the prayer on the foot of the Pettus Bridge. I'd never been to the Pettus Bridge. So that was remarkable. It was almost like a Jewish Stations of the Cross for me.
That's awesome.
And then in addition to the documentary, I've also got a narrative feature based on my dad's life called King's Rabbi. Just had a meeting with a Hollywood
he's just
producer
cashing
this
in.
past week, actually.
Cashing
where we
in.
were talking about casting choices for who would play my dad and other characters. So I've got those three things going on right now.
So we got a speaking tour, a documentary, and a feature film. Oh boy.
Amazing. Well, I'm happy to hear about all of them, and I can't wait to see them. Appreciate you spending some time with me.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That joint was terrible. I just made a 30-minute video, almost 2 hours. So, but yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody. Peace only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. Goodness gracious.